I don't know.
Well, the way I was always presented with Sharia law was that it was a very strict and harsh form of rules and laws in the Middle East, that if you didn't follow them, very harsh punishments would fall on you, including the death penalty.
Speak up. I'm not really sure, but I think it's like a set of laws and kind of guidelines that are imposed. They kind of impose like a strict punishment against individuals who don't follow guidelines set forth in the Quran.
I have no idea.
Sharia law. Sharia law is the Islamic law, means the law decreed by God for Muslims, and that includes prayer, fasting, pilgrimage, etc.
My understanding, Sharia law is the Islamic law that the Muslims use. It covers personal matters, and it also covers the same matters that law in the United States covers, such as crime, politics, and economics.
Sharia law is Islamic law that is based on doctrines of the Quran that are implemented and enforced to create the state level or even local level for that matter. And it is either enforced in tandem or in place of civil law.
Well, the Sharia is the corpus of Islamic law, the way it developed over time in the aftermath of the conquests of the Islamic armies out of the Arabian Peninsula. And it is something, as all legal systems that developed over time, was added on to over time, and is, in that sense, a living corpus. It's never been the exclusive legal system in any part of the Islamic world, because it has always had to compete with customary law. And if you look at the great dynasties in the Islamic world, they all paid lip service to Sharia, to the divine law. But in effect, at best, there was always a juxtaposition of, an existence side by side of parts of that divine law and partly customary law coming from Central Asia, for example, in the case of many of the dynasties after, the first millennium.
The common misconception about Sharia law is people think it's a punishment, it's a way of punishing, while Sharia law is more like teaching and education.
Well, I think the misconceptions that are attached to Sharia law are tied to misconceptions people have about Islam and Muslims in general. Particularly in the United States, following the 9/11 operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, there is, the obvious terrorist attacks that are associated with that. There is some degree of prejudice against Muslims. People tend to think that they're more violent and radical and extreme than the average and normal Muslim is. So I think people associate Sharia law with that same misconception they have about
well, I think the biggest misconception is that, well, to begin with, most people in America probably don't even know what it is, including myself.
Sharia law.
Well, one of the misconceptions, I think, is first of all that Muslims in this country are about to unleash Sharia law on us if we're not careful, and that Sharia law just means hacking of hands and amputating people for crimes. I think that's actually the greatest misperception about Sharia.
It depends on the values of the society in which it is governed. Personally, I would prefer secular law, one that isn't attached to a particular religion, just because not everyone within the country will adhere to that religion and the values that it is trying to enforce through Sharia law.
Not really, because I don't think it's consistent with our modern conceptions and perceptions of life. Even in Muslim countries, the way they exist today, Sharia law in most countries is not in effect, and to the extent that it is, it's only partially in effect, because Sharia law, to my knowledge, does not incorporate all aspects of life. It's not for nothing that in the Ottoman Empire and Iran and elsewhere, as of the 19th century, regimes began to import Western laws, Western commercial laws, laws regulating the functioning of the state, for example, to the point where Sharia law ended up being limited mostly to personal affairs, to issues of divorce and inheritance, male-female relations, and so forth, and criminal cases for the most part. If you look at the criminal part, I don't think Sharia law is compatible, certainly not with my ideas of how to mete out justice to people who have committed.
As far as it being implemented in the United States specifically, that would probably take some time. I don't see that happening anytime soon. Now, do I think it's the craziest thing in the world? Absolutely not. That's what these Muslims live for, and that's what their morals are guided by. So, but in the United States specifically, I think our judicial system wants to have everything standardized so that every single person is treated the same. So I know that it's newly implemented in Britain from what I know of it, and we'll have to see in the forthcoming years, how effective it really is. I don't think of the Sharia law as necessarily a bad system. Maybe some flaws that we have in the United States and other modernized societies could possibly be solved, or help to get solved by implementing different principles of
Sharia law?
No, I don't think it is.
Okay.
Absolutely not. I think we have too many civil rights activists here to ever allow that.
Based on the connotation that it kind of gives off, I would have to assume that it probably would not work in America.
I don't think so, because I think Americans are much more jealously focused on maintaining their own traditions, and the notion of the Constitution being of prevalent importance to the American mind. And I also do think that Islamophobia, to use that term, is much more ingrained in this country, in the sense that people are not really used to the kind of multiculturalism that would enable that type of juxtaposition or incorporation of elements of Sharia law within a larger secular framework.
I mean, it could. I mean, why not?